And without any further ado, I'd like to welcome our guest speaker for today, Tyreese Smith, who is a communications major at Penn State University. He is also a basketball insider representative, a scout and founder of Reese's Prep Network, otherwise known as the RPN. His extensive experience in public relations has allowed him to acquire knowledge on communicating with others, public speaking, as well as verbal and nonverbal communication. And he's going to be sharing some tips and tricks with us today. So please help me welcome our guest speaker, Tyreese Smith.
How's everybody doing? Howdy, by the way, from Pennsylvania. Let's get into it, shall we?
Tyreese, your mic is muted.
Tyreese, your mic is muted again.
Okay, we good? Bet. Sorry about the inconvenience. Let's get into it. So, I am Tyreese Smith, basketball representative, scout, insider, and even a content creator. I grew up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. For those who don't know, Harrisburg is the capital of Pennsylvania. We sit right in the southeast portion. Some people can call it South Central. Some can call it Central Pennsylvania, but I like to say we're smack dab in the middle. We're from 2 hours away from Philly, an hour 30 from Baltimore, 2 hours from DC, just to name some other really historic places. I am a senior and communications major at Pennsylvania State University, otherwise known as Penn State, known for being a basketball personality in the culture. I work with a lot of people, even from Canada, from the Ontario province, and have worked in British Columbia as well. And I'm kind of expanding more out as I go along in life. My future aspirations considered, I look to enter into marketing, more communications marketing, but whether that's sports, business, finance, or healthcare, I'm the type of person where I love to just market what's good, market what's wrong, but regardless, just sharing a piece of everything for everyone to see. So it's a beautiful, beautiful way to share. Now, to have a little bit of fun before I get into all of the serious stuff, this is what I know about Canada. Canada from my POV. Canada was declared a country in 1867 with the British North America Act. I believe Ontario was one of the provinces who linked up with two other provinces, and that's where it all began to spread and how the country was declared. Current Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. I've seen things on Six Buzz TV and from other people's opinions, and I'm not going to get into that right now, but just know that that is the current Prime Minister. Canada is also America's neighbor. Hi. Second largest country in the world right now. Even not trying to get controversial on Quebec, but they're more conservative and they kind of want to be by themselves. And this is what I've heard from people. Again, I've never been to the Quebec area, but they don't even have Canada's flag up. So that pretty much gives you that idea. But most importantly, Canada is known for their beautiful scenery, brutal winters, hockey, maple syrup, entertainment. Even growing up, I listened to a lot of Drake, Weekend, Justin Bieber, and even television-wise, I watched a lot of Degrassi growing up. Maybe my middle school years, I watched a lot, but that's kind of where I knew Drake from. So, that kind of goes tie and tie with each other. But also what I love about Canada is the diversity. As you see people on this panel right now, there's a lot of different faces. Let's get down to it. So what is public speaking? Public speaking is a process of communicating, presenting information to a live audience. Public speaking can cover an array of topics. Some examples you guys can know is a speech from the Prime Minister or President, a business conference, education presentations like this one, religious worship, and also many more. The goal of the speech is to educate, entertain, influence, and persuade the audience. Elements of public speaking. Just 4 key things to know. Always have an awareness of and sensitivity towards your audience. You have to be able to relate to an audience, and that's a very important thing when giving a speech. But also, an exchange of messages about content rather than relationship. Being dependent on feedback to know if your message is getting across. So always make sure you know what you're talking about, but also people listening can have an idea of what you're talking about too. But also public speaking is communicated face-to-face rather than mediated. Now, you might think, why did I just slap a picture of Aristotle on the screen? But he was an important figure towards rhetoric and speech. Aristotle, born 384 to 322 BC, was an ancient Greek philosopher and scientist who is known as one of the most influential figures of Western history. Aristotle incorporated ethos, logos, pathos into his teachings while establishing 6 tools to help guide non-traditional or poor speakers present better speeches. He was also known for writing his treatise, Rhetoric, which focused on the art of persuasion. He defined the rhetorician as someone who is always able to see what is persuasive. He's also considered rhetoric to be not a tool to convince the audience, but as an art form that could help present a persuasive argument. Now let's understand ethos, logos, and pathos. Ethos, presentation. It's based on the credibility of the speaker. You have to be able to convince the audience whether it's he or she is qualified to speak on the subject. Subject matter or well-known type of level. Logos, which is the argument, to follow a logical structure, contains the use of facts or figures to support the speaker's claim. This can enhance the speaker's presentation as the information makes and looks the speaker sound knowledgeable. So kind of tying in with each other with ethos, just make sure you're credible. But most importantly, pathos, which is the audience. Pathos relates to audience's emotions or a speaker's ability to make a connection with someone. If most effective and used right, the speaker can be at the top of his or her game by relating their subject to the audience. Politics would be a great example of pathos. Here are 6 tools. Sorry about that. Here are 6 tools to help persuade in a speech. anaphora, which is the repetition of a word or a phrase. Think of it as politics. You see Trudeau do it. You see even down here Biden do it, or any of the high important leaders within the country. Repetition of a word, it matters. Like even political speeches, you see them all the time. Fists could be held high, or they're just giving it out. They could say stuff like, "We want equality," or "We want change," "We want peace." And you see everyone just kind of like clapping towards it with what they agree with. That's kind of an example of anaphora right there, as persuading by using repetition of words can help bring your audience in even more. Inversion, which is more of the reversal of the usage of a word. You're kind of reversing the order. For example, you would say, "His sorrow is infinite." Reverse the whole sentence around. Infinite in his sorrow. It kind of is a little tricky to understand, but doing that can help you get your point across in the speech. Next, irony. Saying one thing when you really mean the opposite. I could have a long day at school, for example, and I can be like, "Oh my gosh, I really enjoyed going to my 6 o'clock evening class." Yeah, I'm lying, but the thing is, when you really mean the opposite, it helps bring some kind of enhancement towards your speech, as I've learned this. Rhetorical questions. Questions that make a statement. These can be obvious like questions. You can ask, "Oh, can a bird fly? Is the Pope Catholic? Is New York a state?" It's just something that makes a statement, but it's an obvious question that anyone can really answer. Analogies, a comparison between two things. Life is a box of chocolates. He was confused as a comment at the end of a sentence. You're just comparing two different matters and putting it into one. Anathesis. Lastly, a contrasting thought to produce tension. For example, these can be kind of quotes in your speech. You could say, "Speech is silver, but silence is gold. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Keep your friends close, but keep your enemies closer." Those are some of the 6 tools to help persuade in your speech. Let's get to the real stuff. Formal communication. A lot of this happens within a business environment or in the workplace, but formal communication consists of exchanging info through 2 or more channels. The flow of information is controlled and needs to deliberate effort to be properly communicated. There's 3 conditions: being rational, structured, and goal-oriented. Types of communications can include vertical, which goes from top to bottom, horizontal, which can go from like coworkers, and even diagonal stretches amongst different parties in the room. And as I said, besides just the business context of it, this can also happen in speeches, digitally with emails, memos, and even this presentation as well. Informal communication. This happens, I would say that this could happen in a business context, as you see in the picture. It can happen in the workplace, but you can even be with a group of friends. But it's a multi-dimensional communication that flows throughout an organization. Far more relational than formal, as it deals with social relations and moves at a faster pace. This can be workplace gossip, classroom gossip, stuff like that. I would compare it to the grapevine from what Drake was talking about in his intro, "Over My Dead Body," and his album "Take Care." Just have to throw that in there real quick. But this method of communication is considered effective as it produces more productivity and healthy relationships. Nonverbal communication. We do this all the time. It's the use of gestures, body language. But did you know that we use 80% of our communication for actions, then 20% when we speak? It's the act of conveying information without the use of words. As I said, when you talk, you can use gestures to get your point across. It's with how your body language is. If you're sitting up straight, not hands like this, or fiddling with your clothes. These can be proxemics, eye gaze, make sure you're making eye contact with your audience, haptics, appearance, how you come off, Pennsylvania, hat, overalls, and artifacts. Here's an example from the movie 1,000 Words featuring Eddie Murphy. This was his coffee shop scene when he lost his voice, if you ever watched the movie, and the worker at the barista had to take his order. I thought it was hilarious, so I would care to share.
Oh, Booking.com. I'm going to
Sorry for that.
somewhere, anywhere.
Good morning, sir. What can I get started for you today? Express yourself. What size? All right.
Oh, wait, sorry, stop. Can you share the screen?
Care for a pastry? Nope.
Tyreese?
Tyreese, we're not able to see the screen.
You saw what?
We're not able to see the screen. We're still seeing the PowerPoint.
Oh, yeah,
presentation.
hold on. Gotcha, yeah. I haven't used Zoom in a while, so.
Good morning, sir. What can I get started for you today? Express yourself. What size? All right. 3 venti lattes. Would you care for a pastry? Nope. Mocha. 3 mocha lattes. Double chocolate chip muffin. Yum. You want 3 Paul McCartney CDs. Awesome. I love the Beatles. They are my life. So whatever you do. Assassination. Abraham Lincoln. You, me, gun, shoot. 3 shots. I'm a little slow today. All right. So 3 lattes, 3 mochas, double chocolate chip muffin, and 3 shots. No assassinations. Oh, and 3 Paul McCartney CDs. It's gonna be 6812.
Would you tell me when it's safe to cross? Are you deaf? I said, can you tell me when it's safe to cross? Mm-hmm. It is? Thanks, fella. What's your name? My name is Jesse. My name is Jesse. Hey, my brother, what's that? The brother was fellow. That's it. Was that a drive-by? What was that? Somebody tell me, was that a drive-by? Thanks, son. White people show is nice. Oh!
Go back into it.
Oh, Tyreese, you're muted. I can't hear you.
Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, it's a whole different Zoom compared to what I use down here. So I've been trying to navigate through that. But that is an example of form of nonverbal communication using gestures. Verbal communication. This is pretty much everyday conversation. It's the act of sharing information with other people. There are 4 types of verbal communication: interpersonal, intrapersonal, small group communication, and also public. Knowing the different types of communication and their importance can help you become a better communicator. Here are some of my favorite tips on presenting. Before you do your speech, make sure your research is credible. Understand your topic so that you're more prepared going into it. What are you trying to persuade, argue, or even teach people? Second, understand the expectations and details. Understanding your speech will come in so much handy before you do it. If it's an academic speech within the classroom for a course, understand the point system, knowing, okay, if I have eye contact, if I lose any eye contact, will I get points deducted for it? Will I get points taken away if my information is not on the screen? Just understand those little details will help you out even better. Know your audience. Know who is in the room. Make sure your demographics are down pat. Are you talking to college students, high school students, adults, adolescents? Make sure you know your audience so you know your topic is age appropriate. Structure your speech. Organization. It does not have to be from A to Z, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but shape it in order to make sure you know that your speech flows. Even from my speech, I wanted to start out with the basics of introducing myself, which is, a good intro, just to say a little about me, and then go into the basics from Aristotle and stuff, just to make you understand before we really get into it. That's kind of structuring your speech and how it was taught. Don't overload your slides. On my slides, I maybe had about 4 or 5 bullet points or just a sentence, and you kind of talk more about it as you go. I learned this my first semester of college around 4 years ago when we was taught to bring flashcards if we needed them, just to map out more on our flashcards and talk through there instead of just looking at the board the whole time. Memorize your first and last lines. You can memorize your whole speech if needed, but memorizing your first and last lines, they come in handy. Most importantly, practice, practice, practice. The more you practice, the more perfect you're at it. Again, we're not all perfect, but being sharp, it matters in life. If you have to practice in front of a small group or even your best friend, go for it, It comes in handy and makes you more prepared. Now, during your speech, get in the mindset or a zone. For me, usually when I have to go, let's say to work, my sports job, or I have to go give a speech for class or something like that, I'm drinking water, listening to music. Maybe I take a shower before I leave the crib. Getting into that mindset, getting into that zone, it helps you become more comfortable by the time you have to give a speech. Don't look too much at your notes. Trust your preparation. When I was an athlete, when you're thrown in between those lines, when you have to play, you can't overthink. You can't think about the next move and think about how a defense will react to it. Trust your preparation. Trust your training. Trust what have you been taught, and trust and have that confidence that I got this, Making eye contact during a speech. Yes, I am talking to you on Zoom, so I'm staring into the screen, but in person, use what I like to call the wall technique. Stare straight at a wall. Don't look around for the person in the front row or at the teacher and stuff. Look straight at the wall and stare the whole entire time. Yeah, still speak, but I promise you, it relieves so much stress and nerves when you look at the wall while you're giving the speech. Use pauses in between. I just paused. But no, seriously, use pauses in between. It helps shape your speech to make sure it flows. Repeat yourself. We all get it. I could be flying this presentation right now and some would understand, some wouldn't, but don't be afraid to repeat yourself in your speech. It's okay to. We're not all perfect, but we want to make sure our audience somewhat has an understanding of what we are talking about. Let some questions go. What I mean by this is it's okay if every question does not get answered. People ask me all the time about my process and why I have a purpose for doing things. And simply, I just cannot answer it. I feel as though everything doesn't need an answer towards it. I can give you a PR, public relations kind of answer, but some things don't need answer. You could say, oh, I'll just get back to you later when I have an answer for you. That's more of a professional, polite way to say it. Or sometimes things just do not need answered. Keep active during your speech. Make sure you are talking as much as possible and getting your point across. I know sometimes when we're speaking, we can have nerves. Some people get rattled up. Some people stutter. But make sure you're keeping active during your speech. Even if you have to take not a slight pause, but even if you have to like swirl around things or stall, please do, and that goes into having your audience first. Making sure you're able to connect with the audience. Trust me, when you're doing an assignment in class or when you have to give a speech somewhere else, the audience does not want to see you fail. We don't. But make sure you take your time. Just remember the audience is on your side. And as long as you know the environment is yours, you got this. Lastly, don't beat yourself up. We're living in times right now where we're thinking so hard about things and we're getting in our feelings and someone's always moody or they just feel defeated, Don't beat yourself up about it. We all make mistakes and get nervous. Be as confident as possible and own the room. Here's some resources for public speaking in case anybody needed some more information on it. The last slide, the red on building connections, kind of grabbed it from Twitter as I'm an active Twitter user, but this helps build more connections as you go on through the college years, post-graduation. Just thought I would throw that in there for anybody who needed help. Lastly, I want to say, always bet on yourself. Give me 1 second. Let's get real. Growing up, I had a lot of issues. I had a speech impediment growing up. I had self-image issues, identity issues growing up. It wasn't as hard as I kind of make it seem. Don't feel bad for me. But getting invited to give speeches like this or to just be in public in general, I still get a lot of anxiety, but I've learned over time that you have to just face it. It's only going to make you better if you face challenges. Even 4 years ago, starting out college, I was a train wreck with my personal life, moving far as I used to go to school near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It's about 3 hours from me, but I had a lot of struggles growing up, and I would not be in the position I am today if I did not face them. I just want to say, always bet on yourself. You never know what someone else is going through, but comparing yourself to people, it doesn't help. Always bet on yourself. Even if you're not the most confident person in the room, think positively. You never know what you're going to get something out of anything you do, but always bet on yourself. Here's my contact. Kind of have a little screenshot in case anybody wants to take a picture. I'm not I haven't really learned QR codes yet, but I just had a little screenshot of my LinkedIn right there. LinkedIn, the link is also there too, along with my email in case there's any questions or if you need to contact me. It is all right there. Most importantly, though, I just want to say thank you for your time today. I'm a little bit under the weather, a little bit tired as I was working on homework last night because my Eagles play later in the Super Bowl. So I'm a little under the weather, but you know, I appreciate you for having me. I'll have to get used to a Canadian Zoom as the controls are a little bit different, but thank you for having me and I appreciate you. So thank you.